In 2013, Peter Jackson, director of the 2005 remake of King Kong, initially handpicked Adam Winger to direct Skull Island, a sequel to Jackson's film. Jackson later suggested Guillermo del Toro. Upon the film transitioning studios, Wingard and Jackson were dropped from the project, while producer Mary Parent remained on board. The film was officially announced by Legendary Pictures at the 2014 San Diego Comic-Con, and Universal Pictures was the distributor. Legendary then moved the project to Warner Bros. To develop a crossover film featuring Kong and Godzilla. Legendary offered Joe Cornish the job of directing the film, but in September 2014, the studio announced that Jordan Vogt-Roberts would be directing this 2017 film, Kong: Skull Island.
Cole, what's wrong with you? How you even got an appetite right now?
Eating's for the living.
We just got taken down by a monkey the size of a building.
Yeah. That was an unconventional encounter.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, June.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. Connor back with you along with Chris, and today we are finishing up the Kong franchise, or the movies for the Kong franchise, because we are going to do our own little short ranking video. And then I've been looking forward to this one because we did all the other MonsterVerse films with our Godzilla franchise review, and now we're finally getting to wrap up the last film we haven't done in the MonsterVerse with Kong Skull Island. So this is a film, I seen this one in theaters when it came out, and of course, you know, this film had so much hype for it because it was supposed to be the lead up to Godzilla King of the Monsters, and then eventually Godzilla versus Kong Godzilla versus Kong was going to become a thing, and they didn't know what they were going to do after Godzilla versus Kong. And so this was one I was super excited about because I liked the 2005 King Kong film, and we hadn't had a film for pretty much 12 years by the time this came out, so I was super excited for this one. Also loved the first Godzilla film with the MonsterVerse, and then this being set in prior years, back all the way back in the 70s, as kind of like a solo Kong like introductory film. Like, I had a lot of fun with this one, and even on the rewatch, you know, like, this is one of the films that I'll put on every now and again, whether I'm alone or if a friend wants to watch it, or my daughter, she's a big Kong and Godzilla nerd just like I am. So I had fun with this one. So Chris, I know I don't think we've talked about if you've seen this one in theaters. I know we've said that.
I 100% saw this in theaters opening weekend for sure. Probably even no, I actually probably went because I had Thursdays off from work specifically so that I could see movie premieres on Thursday nights. So I had that as my one day that I wasn't available to work. I wasn't yet management then. I was still just part-time employee at that time. So I was able to say, like, hey, don't schedule me Thursdays. And part of the reason was that I wanted to have those Thursday nights free to go see the new movies that came out. And this was one of the last ones that was out before I made manager. And I was eagerly anticipating it. I remember the early days when this was going to be a release in November of 2016, and then Godzilla 2, not yet named at the time, was going to be summer of 2018, and then the planned King Kong versus Godzilla crossover was going to potentially be in 2019, and then over time, that stuff all got pushed back. Kong became 2017. King of the Monsters became 2019. Then Godzilla vs. Kong was going to be 2020, but then because of the lockdowns became 2021. But by the time between 2014 and 2017, by the time you went through that, I was starving for just more of the world that they were building here, more of this, you know, what became known as the MonsterVerse. And it was a good time, you know, and a really different King Kong movie. You know, all of the American King Kong movies had essentially been in that same mold. Humans go to the island, they bring Kong back, he gets killed in New York City. So seeing this play around with the period as well and go to the Vietnam setting, but also just kind of really shuffle around the whole approach to it. And, you know, one of the big things that people said about detractors said about the 2005 King Kong was like, hey, all the stuff on Kong Island or on Skull Island was the best stuff. And then this was a movie where they kind of just leaned in and said, yeah, the whole movie's on the island. And I really love it for that. So yeah, it's a fun one. It's a good time. Great cast. Like, you know, we'll get into it, but like generally it's just like a really strong cast, really good, colorful group of characters. You know, I'm quite a big fan of this one.
Yeah, I was super excited when, like, especially with the announcement of like Kong Skull Island, like bringing it back to Skull Island. I was curious, like, all right, what kind of new monsters and bugs or insects, birds, like, what are we gonna see in this one now? Because we've seen the Peter Jackson King Kong, we've seen all the other King Kongs. So it's like, what different are you gonna bring in? And like you said, it's a great cast. I love the portrayal of Skull Island in this film with all the different insects and the skull crawlers and just even like the scenery, cinematography of the film. Like, I think it's a very well shot. It's nice to Godzilla 2014 was so dark that it's nice to come to this film and
Yeah.
90% of the film is in the broad daylight. Kong's out in the open with the sun shining down, and then, you know, the scene that where it is at night, I think that's like beautifully shot as well. So I had a blast with this, and we'll get into this a little later, but I heard there was an after credits scene, and I couldn't wait for it because I was
Yes.
amped up. And this is the one film with King Kong that you knew, like, all right, like he's not gonna die in this film because we have a Godzilla versus Kong setup due here in a couple years. So he's gonna survive through this film, and then he's supposedly supposed to grow larger and bigger to be able to fight Godzilla. So I was all amped up, and the girl I was dating at the time, she was just judging me full on hardcore. How bad I was nerding out
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, the one spoiler I had to give my mother before she would even see the movie on her own time was whether or not King Kong died at the end. She had to know. She couldn't bear it if he died at the end. She wouldn't watch it. So I had to let her know, you know, no, mom, that's not what happens here, but you should see the movie. I and it's cool that, you know, that they kind of went a little bit of the prequel route, kind of like how in the early Marvel days, they went back and did Captain America: The First Avenger as a prequel to the other modern set movies. And I like that they kind of did this as a prequel too. And it's one of those things where when I personally marathon the movies, I watch this one first and then I go to Godzilla 2014 just because you kind of feel the flow a little bit better. And it just, I don't know, I just kind of like, you know, Kong's story kind of takes place first and then you go to Godzilla's story, and I like that a lot.
Absolutely. I'll get into some background on the film for you so we can keep on rolling. Kong Skull Island is a 2017 American monster film directed by Jordan Vogt Roberts, produced by Legendary Pictures, and distributed by Warner Bros. Pictures. It is a reboot of the King Kong franchise and the second film in the MonsterVerse, serving as the 11th film in the King Kong franchise. The film stars Tom Hiddleston, Samuel L. Jackson, John Goodman, Brie Larson, Jing Chan, Toby Kebbell, John Ortiz, Corey Hawkins, Jason Mitchell, Shea Wingham, Thomas Mann, Terry Notary, and John C. Reilly. Set in 1973, the film follows a team of scientists and Vietnam War soldiers traveling to the uncharted Skull Island and meeting Kong, a gigantic ape who is the last of his species, closely followed by other terrifying creatures. The film was announced in July 2014 at San Diego Comic-Con, and Vogt Roberts was announced as a director in September 2014. The project initially began at Universal Pictures as an origin story, but was later moved to Warner Bros. To develop a shared cinematic universe featuring Godzilla and Kong. Principal photography began in October 2015 in Hawaii and various locations around Vietnam and ended in March 2016. And Kong Skull Island was released theatrically on March 10th, 2017, to generally positive reviews from critics with praise for its visual effects, action sequences, and performances, particularly Jackson and Riley. It was also a box office success, becoming the second highest grossing installment in the MonsterVerse and the King Kong franchise to date. The film received a Best Visual Effects nominations at the 90th Anniversary Academy Awards, and an animated series, Skull Island, was released on June 22nd, 2023 to Netflix. So there's a little background on the Kong Skull Island.
Very nice.
Why don't we go ahead and get into a trailer? We'll get a plot synopsis read off for us, and we'll come back with some fun facts because I got a ton of them for this film, some numbers, and then we'll get back into dissecting the characters, the score, and some other stuff from the film.
Yeah, sounds good.
These are photos of an island in the South Pacific.
The place where myth and science meet.
We use explosives to shake the earth, helping us to map the surface of the island.
You're dropping bombs. Scientific instruments.
Is that a monkey?
Magnificent.
You knew that thing was out here?
I'm sorry for your men, Colonel. But if you want to make their sacrifice worthwhile, hit us home with proof. Monsters exist.
Whoa. Your friend there can put that down. What the hell is this place?
That's Kong. He's king around here. Kong's a pretty good king. Keeps to himself mostly. But you don't go into someone's house and start dropping bombs unless you're picking a fight. Kong's god on the island, but the devils live below us.
And what are they called?
I call them skull crawlers.
Why?
Never said that name out loud before. It sounds stupid now that I say. Just, you call them whatever you want. It's a good group of boys. We're all gonna die together out here. You shouldn't have come here.
In 1944, two World War II fighter pilots, American pilot Hank Marlowe and Japanese pilot Gunpei Akari, parachute onto an island in the South Pacific after a dogfight and engage in close combat until the fight is interrupted by a giant ape. In 1973, Bill Randa, head of the organization Monarch, convinces the government to allow him to lead a research expedition to the recently discovered Skull Island. He recruits a U.S. Army unit commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Preston Packard, tracker and former British Special Air Service Captain James Conrad, and anti-war photographer Mason Weaver. Arriving at Skull Island, Packard's men begin dropping seismic explosives, developed by Bill's seismologist Houston Brooks, to map out the island and prove Brooks' hollow earth theory. The unit is suddenly attacked by the giant ape, scattering the survivors across the island. Conrad, Weaver, Landsat official Neves, Brooks, researcher and biologist San Lin, and one of the soldiers, Slivko, head north to reach a planned extraction point, while Packard and the rest of his men, Bill and another Landsat official, search for Packard's right-hand man, Chapman, who is isolated from the group. Conrad's group encounters the local Iwi natives and an older Marlowe. Marlowe tells the group about the giant ape named Kong. Kong protects the island from predators, including subterranean reptile creatures dubbed skull crawlers, which were awakened from the bombings and responsible for killing Kong's entire species, leaving him as the last of his kind. The iwi believe when Kong dies, a large skullcrawler will awaken and ravage the island. Marlowe reveals he and Ikari became friends during their time on the island, but Ikari was killed by a skullcrawler some time ago. While Chapman is ambushed and devoured by a skullcrawler, Conrad's group helps Marlowe finish a boat made from parts of Marlowe and Ikari's downed planes. They ride down the river where Neves is torn apart by carnivorous birds and secure communication with Packard's group. When they regroup with Packard, he insists on searching for Chapman. Marlowe leads them through a mass grave of dinosaurs and Kong's family members. The skullcrawler that killed Chapman attacks them, killing Bill and other soldiers before Weaver triggers a flammable gas explosion that kills it. Upon learning of Chapman's death, Packard reveals his plan to kill Kong and avenge his fallen men. Marlowe and Brooks attempt to explain that killing Kong would lead to the skullcrawlers running rampant, but Packard refuses to listen. The groups part ways, with Packard's group and Slivko retrieving the weapons from Chapman's chopper and laying a trap for Kong at a nearby lake, while the rest head back to the boat. Conrad and Weaver meet Kong up close and, seeing his true peaceful nature, resolve to save him. Packard's group lures Kong with the remaining seismic charges and incapacitates him with ignited napalm. Conrad, Weaver, and Marlowe intervene and, after a standoff, persuade the other soldiers to spare Kong, but Packard refuses to yield. The larger skullcrawler finally emerges from the lake, forcing everyone but Packard to retreat. Packard prepares to detonate the charges, but Kong crushes him with his fist. The skullcrawler overpowers Kong and chases the group, until Kong returns and kills it with the humans' help. The survivors reach the rendezvous point and leave the island as Kong stoically watches. In the aftermath, Marlowe reunites with his wife and meets his son for the very first time. In a post-credits scene, Monarch detains and recruits Conrad and Weaver, who are informed by Lynn and Brooks that Kong is not the only monster king, and shows archival footage of cave paintings depicting Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah. The final images shows Godzilla and Ghidorah in a fierce battle. I'll get some numbers rolling for you here. Kong Skull Island has a budget of $185 million and it grossed $568 million worldwide. So Chris has our inflation numbers for those.
Yeah, while we might not think that 7 going on 8 years since 2017 would amount to a ton of inflation, unfortunately for all of us, it has. And the 185 million budget would equate to about a 236 million budget these days. And that box office take, again, not accounting for exchange rates and the fact that ticket sales actually usually inflate at an even worse rate than the normal dollar, so it would probably be even higher. But at 568 million worldwide box office gross would be, give or take, about 727 million these days.
Yeah, that's up there.
Yeah,
I did not think I figured maybe
we can
for the
think
budget, I figured maybe like 20 million.
Yeah, we can thank the post-lockdown era for that here in the States, at least.
Yeah, that is insane for the budget to go up 50 million, almost a third of what their original budget was just over the last 7-8 years.
Yeah, that's bad.
These aren't bad though. We got some good numbers here for for our ratings. This is rated a 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb, which I personally think is a little low. 75% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. 62% rating on Metacritic, which is terribly low, and then 78% of Google users liked this film. So we're a little up and down.
I think it belongs. Yeah, it is a little bit of a divisive movie. I do meet some folks. There's in the early days when it was just G14 and this movie, there was a lot of division over what kind of MonsterVerse fan you were, like which style was more in your, what movie was your kind of movie, because G14 and this are probably, in terms of tone, probably the most kind of dissimilar, at least at this time. Now we have the other movies that are kind of more along a gradient and going into more different directions, but at this time, like, there was quite a contrast between the feel and the vibe of a movie like this compared to G14. And I think it deserves in the 80s, no matter how you rate it. I think it's at least a kind of like an 8 out of 10 kind of a movie. It's not this masterpiece, but it's very, very good.
Yeah, I know it. On IMDb it's kind of just like Google users. You can click on it, put your own rating in, and after you get so many people putting their own ratings in, it'll average out and whatnot. But 62% on Metacritic. I mean that has to be 20-25 points low for me.
Yeah, Metacritic tends to be in my experience. Metacritic, I think, for any given movie is usually the lowest in my experience.
Well, they can just go to hell. No,
Yeah,
because we
they're
need a
like,
higher rating.
yeah, they're harsher. They're sometimes they're some of the only ones that are kind of harsh on movies that everyone else likes to pretend are good, and Metacritic will be like, no, this movie's actually kind of crap, and then I don't know, and then but then they also kind of like pee on the parade of movies that are great. Like a movie can be like a near perfect score, and Metacritic will somehow have like the lowest score of all of the usual aggregating websites. So I don't know. Metacritic's they're a tough crowd. They're a tough crowd.
Well, with 75% from Rotten Tomatoes, so I mean, 3 out of every 4, I guess you could say approved of this film. I'll take that because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
one of the
that's about
3.
yeah, that's about right. That's about right.
I do have our Kong numbers as always. So Kong is on screen for 14 minutes and 25 seconds, or just about 12% of the film, with his first appearance at just under 39 or 30 minutes into the film, or about 25% into the film. So
Take that,
we
Peter
don't get very
Jackson.
much screen time with Kong compared to other Kong movies. They're usually up in the high teens, low 20s for a couple of them, but we get him like bright and shining early, 30 minutes into the film. So that's always nice.
Yep, Peter Jackson can put that in his pipe and smoke it. No waiting around an hour long for this one. But also usually the Kong movies, yes, they have other monsters, especially the 33 and the 2005 movie. But for this one, this is one where the skull crawlers are kind of almost this co-starring kind of monster role. So Kong's kind of splitting his screen time a little bit between these other major monster characters, and you have like the minor character monsters that show up here and now and again, but they're not as prominent. But the skull crawlers do occupy a pretty solid amount of screen time in the movie.
Yeah, there's a couple that we get in, we get a couple seconds with like the giant water buffalo, the skull crawlers. We get like a stick insect bug, we get like the giant spider. Like there's some good like bug action, like or like monster action in this besides Kong. But I think what we get of Kong in this film is phenomenal. I love how 90% of it again is in broad daylight, where it's just bright, and Kong, is just in the middle of a sunny island in all his glory.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that, Peter Jackson's King Kong was very much it was good and it did its own thing. And I like that this movie almost, I don't know if it was deliberately, but is a contrast to that in so many ways to make it feel fresh. They're going to Skull Island, they're taking the choppers to Skull Island within like 20-25 minutes of the movie, maybe. And it's not this sort of the 2005 film was sort of this land that time forgot kind of approach to the island. They almost wanted to make it feel kind of ancient and prehistoric. And this one is like, no, this is like a tropical sort of island of that territory of the world, and so a little bit more of a modernized feeling to it, or at least not one that's meant to feel dinosaur. And they go with a different take with their creature design, this flora fauna kind of design, and I really like that. It's a lot of contrast. Kong gets to be more of a straight up like a yeti, like a monster, like a Bigfoot, like a giant creature that is ape like, as opposed to simply a gorilla. So I like that a lot.
Absolutely. I always like my King Kong to be more standing upright than on all fours, like in the Peter Jackson.
Yeah, I like that. I like to kind of go and to see him kind of move in between both postures. But yeah, I kind of, I like the more he's a postured up monster. The kind of where you can kind of make believe like, hey, this could have been like a guy in a suit in the olden days.
Absolutely. That is all I have for you on the numbers side. I'm going to flip right over to get us some fun facts going on. And on this first one, excuse me if I butcher some of these pronunciations.
You already got Shea Wiggum's name wrong when it's she. You said she Wiggum. It's Shea Wiggum.
See, apologies.
No, it's okay. I'm just busting your chops.
The scenes with mountains, rivers, and the grassy fields were mostly shot in Vietnam, including Ninh Binh and Quang Binh. And
Nailed it.
I think I was close there.
Dude, I have no idea. You're not talking to the right person here.
Ninh Binh and Quang Binh. I don't know. Hell.
Yeah, sounds good.
Jordan Volk Roberts and the cast members said they were the most beautiful places that they've ever been to.
Well, they certainly look nice.
This looks like somewhere that I would want to visit 100% on a vacation if you subtract every monster or giant bug that's living at Skull Island.
Yeah, and I want to give a nice shout out to Larry Fong, the cinematographer of the movie. He was the cinematographer on a number of Zack Snyder movies. So if anyone's a particular fan of the strong visual sense that this movie has, it's very much, you have Larry Fong to thank for a lot of that.
See, I don't watch a lot of Zack Snyder. This is why I got Chris on here.
Pre-Netflix Zack Snyder is very good. Netflix Zack Snyder is definitely a step down. I hate to say it, but his Netflix era has been disappointing. I love his other stuff, though.
I think there's a bunch of people out there that would agree because I do read into things, a lot of reviews and whatnot. So I'm definitely hearing people backing you on that one.
Yeah.
Another one here. Kong is similar to Godzilla from Godzilla 2014 in several ways. Both are the last of their kind. Both have a vendetta against their natural enemies, the Skullcrawlers and the Mutos, who have killed the rest of their species. And both are portrayed as morally neutral alpha predators who maintain order and have no personal quarrel with humans. However, while Godzilla ignores humans and pays them no heed, Kong recognizes and forms relationships with individual humans, either as friends or as enemies. Also, while Godzilla is an adult, Kong is an adolescent, still growing and learning in this film.
Yeah, one of my favorite, YouTube reviews that was kind of talking smack on Godzilla versus Kong when it came out was like, oh, how did Kong get so much bigger? And it's like, do you bother paying attention to these movies? It's a clear line of dialogue where they mention that he's still growing. It's like, are you just crapping on them to crap on them? Like, at least be, sincere and have some integrity about your analysis here.
Yep, I did hear that one. How did he get so big? How's he gonna fight Godzilla? And I'm like, clearly you people didn't go see the movie. You had, or when it came out, you haven't rented it or anything.
They didn't hide that line of dialogue anywhere. It's spoken very clearly out loud.
It was very blatant and obvious for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
This one's a fun one. It's on the helicopter heading into the storm. Samuel L. Jackson's character says, "Hold on to your butts," in a nod to his character from the 1993 film Jurassic Park.
Yeah, absolutely. I grinned ear to ear when that happened in the movie. I'm a huge fan of things like that, and so the fact that it's Sam Jackson repeating the same line from Jurassic Park that's just great. That's just good stuff.
Absolutely, I did the same thing. The Leonardo DiCaprio, what is it, the GIF where he's on the couch and it's like, whoop, 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 there it is. There.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this other, that's a Spielberg movie, and these fun little cross pollinations between Spielberg movies and these Godzilla and Kong movies. Spielberg would have King Kong featured in Ready Player One the next year after this, and also famously Mechagodzilla was in that movie as well. So the back and forth. You had the Godzilla movie in '91. Make a reference to Major Spielberg talking to his son about aliens and things like that. So it's this fun, Jurassic Park has a reference to King Kong where they say, "What do you got in there, King Kong?" Talking about the gates. So like, I love that there's this cross-pollination of Spielberg movies and these giant monster movies.
Absolutely. They just keep going back and forth, paying each other respects. And like you said, I always appreciate that in film.
Mm-hmm.
In the novelization of this film, it's revealed that Conrad, or Tom Hiddleston's character, his cynical demeanor stems from an incident where he failed to save a kidnapped 7-year-old girl named Jenny, who was killed by a sniper along with 2 of the 5 men under his command. So that's why he's kind of uptight.
Good Lord.
Yes, the novelization
Yeah,
for this film is actually very good. I've read it
yeah,
once,
that's a
but
nice.
I want to read it again.
That's a dark bit of backstory, and I'm sure whether filmed or not, that would have been a monologue that Tom Hiddleston would have absolutely killed with his performance. But the powers that be determine that these movies have to be under 2 hours long.
Well, like we always say, give us the 2 hour and 15 minute director's cut.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. If it's gonna include a bit of backstory like that for that character, man, that changes the game. That's a meaty bit of material to cut out.
Yeah, the novelization, I think it's just under 400 pages long, and I was working nights at a Target. Like I do electrical work for
Hmm.
a career, so we clearly couldn't be there while the customers were there. So we were remodeling and doing like all the putting in new cameras and self checkouts and whatnot. So on break, I was, nobody's awake at 2:30 in the morning when I would go take breaks. So I started reading again, and Kong Skull Island was one of the books I picked up, and it was actually it was a good read, and it definitely goes into some detail about the him and the little girl being killed and whatnot. I thought it was a good read. I finished it in like a month and a half, so I must have been into it.
Nice.
Here's another connection to another, I guess you could say, monster kaiju film. Bill Randa mentions in the film that he's been trying to prove that monsters exist for 30 years, which is the same dialogue that John Goodman's character Howard Stambler had spoken in the film 10 Cloverfield Lane from 2016.
Oh, really? Wow, that's nice. That's a fun bit. I'm a huge fan of the original Cloverfield movie.
I have never seen 10 Cloverfield Lane, so that to me is something that I didn't know, but I thought it would be a fun little connection with this
Yeah,
film.
it's a step down for sure. It's not a bad movie at all, but it's a bit of a step down for me. My favorite Cloverfield movie is one that wasn't even actually a Cloverfield movie. My favorite Cloverfield quote unquote spinoff was one that isn't actually connected in, and I think Underwater would have made a great something Cloverfield this that or the other movie because Underwater is a very underrated movie.
See, I haven't seen that either, but I'll be watching it.
Oh, okay. Oh, you want to talk? Okay, creature features, man. You're gonna have to check out Underwater.
That's on our list.
Okay. We'll do.
That is a little preview. That is on our list for
I
2026.
was about to say I don't know how we talked about it and didn't make that happen. I didn't how I didn't fight for that one.
Nope, you did. It is on there. The natives of Skull Island were antagonists out of desperation in the 1933 King Kong, and horrifically degenerate. Oh, that's a word I've never seen before.
What is it? How's it spelled?
Troglodytes?
Yeah, troglodyte. Yeah. Troglodyte.
Oh,
You're
okay.
pronouncing it right. Oh,
All right.
now if you ever want to insult someone, call them a troglodyte. I don't know. I don't know what movie or show I saw where someone used that as an insult, but I saw it young, and so I knew especially if you see someone struggling with technology, man, you want to get them with a condescending word that they might not even have ever heard before. You call them a troglodyte. That's a smart gentleman's insult right there.
All right. Well, we'll start this one again so I can get it all at once. The natives of Skull Island were antagonists out of desperation in the 1933 King Kong, and horrifically degenerate troglodytes in King Kong 2005. And in this movie, they are a very territorial yet ultimately friendly and helpful people. And I'll say, I love the portrayal of them in this film and how they have like the paintings of the skull crawlers and Kong and stuff. I think that whole little scene right there where we're reintroduced to John C. Riley, I think that little snippet is phenomenal in the film.
Yeah, I definitely they were definitely portrayed as in the 2005 film much more like savages, and in this film portraying them with a bit more of a refined, peaceful, pacifist sort of culture. It was definitely a bit more of a mature take on a sort of native population, so I liked that.
Absolutely. Not so. I liked in this film that we weren't following the love story or anything like that. They were just people trying to live out their lives on this island. So
Yeah.
that was nice. They were accepting of people who would just randomly show up there, like John C. Riley's character did and whatnot. They kind of helped take care of him, and just all in all, felt like they were good people.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed.
Kong attempts to snap a skullcrawler's jaws apart at one point in the climax, much like he did the T-Rex in the 33 film and the V-Rex in the 2005 film. In general, the final fight between Kong and the Alpha Skullcrawler appears to take some cues from the 2005 film between the King Kong and the V-Rexes, that battle. And both fights have a very swampy setting, with Kong holding and protecting the female protagonist from the enemy who is trying to eat her. And Kong also happened to use a rock in both fights, but while it was fatal to a V-Rex in King Kong from 2005, it only did minimal damage to the Skullcrawlers in this film.
Yeah, it's a shout out in general to the monster fight choreography in this movie. They really put in some good stuff here, and I do like that. Every time Kong goes for the jaw grab on any other monster, all of the fans know what's coming or know what move he's going for. And I believe in the MonsterVerse, I think we have yet to actually see him kill another creature with the jawbreaker. Is that true?
We've seen him rip some like dog wolf beasts apart in the New Empire. What else?
But I don't think with the jawbreaker move though. Did he?
I don't think he had. He attempted it in Godzilla versus Kong, but
he grabbed Kong. He grabbed Godzilla's jaws. So he actually hasn't gotten to pull off like his trademark move yet. So I mean, hopefully, maybe one of these days he'll get the honor.
Yeah, we've seen him cut a giant snake's head off in the New Empire, and we've seen him rip apart some animals and stuff, but we haven't seen the classic, the go-to yet.
Yeah, the finisher.
Absolutely, yeah. The scene where Kong fights a giant octopus is an homage to King Kong vs. Godzilla from 1963, in which Kong's first fight is against a giant octopus. After the fight, Kong eats the octopus, a possible homage to special effects director Eiji Tsuburaya taking and eating the octopus after the filming of that 1963 film.
Yeah, that's an excellent bit of trivia. I loved seeing, one of the early reviews and early chatter about this Kong for the MonsterVerse. People were like, "Oh yeah, it's Toho Kong. This isn't the classic 25-foot, Marion C. Cooper, Peter Jackson King Kong. This is Toho Kong. This is a Kong that's going to be a giant monster and able to fight Godzilla and other monsters." And so him fighting the sort of squid creature, very much like the original Toho King Kong fought the octopus, is just kind of solidifies that.
Absolutely. I like seeing Kong battle any type of monster. It's a plus that we've got multiple films of him against Godzilla, and he got to tear off Mecha Godzilla's head at the end of Godzilla versus Kong, and it's always fun to see him like kind of kill to eat. He's killed this octopus in this film, and now he's eating it. Or he killed what is it, the war bat in Godzilla versus Kong, and he ends up eating some of that, part of like out of its like neck area, and the girl's like, "Well, that's gross," and it's like, "No, that's
entrails."
Awesome.
Yeah, the entrails, just immediately munching on whatever he gets.
Yeah. This is another one about some more of the novelization. In the novelization, Kong's injuries from Packard's napalm trap are more severe, as his fur is left smoldering here and there, and some patches are completely burnt off, exposing skin underneath. And there are more instances of Kong's intelligence shown, such as him using dirt to put out the fires made by the helicopter battle, and Packard seeing Kong trigger a rock slide to bury a skullcrawler underneath.
Yeah, I like to. Yeah, I mean, it was. What is there to say? I liked all that stuff.
It would have been nice if they could have put more of this stuff in the film.
Yeah, for sure.
And then this is my last one. I know myself will talk about this one here in a little bit as well. There's an after credit scene which sets up the MonsterVerse by establishing that Kong isn't the only king or monster out there, and this leads to pictures of Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah, followed by Godzilla's roar that can be heard when the scene ends.
Yeah, probably my favorite post credit scene of the last decade, almost certainly.
Probably my favorite ending credits scene of all time. Our theater stayed full throughout the entire credits. Pretty much, there were maybe a handful of people that left. And
Yeah.
when they said Kong is not the only king, you heard half the crowd kind of like gasp or like question themselves, like what, like they didn't know it was being set up for like a
Yeah.
Godzilla and Kong, and then
Hmm.
the other half cheered, and then when Godzilla's roar came on at the end, like, kind of like three quarters of our
Yeah.
theater kind of cheered.
Ending it with Godzilla's sorry, excuse me. Ending it with Godzilla's roar is just the chef's kiss. Like that just puts it over the edge. It's so much more than like, oh, I'm gonna talk to you about the Avenger Initiative or something like that. You know, like ending it with Godzilla's roar as you're looking at cave paintings of Godzilla in a Kong Skull Island movie. You know, that's just tops right there.
Yeah, that'll probably still give me chills today when I watch it, type thing. It's just one of those things to where it's those subtle little things that like you could have ended it with just nothing or like a black screen, like where we ended
Mhm.
on Godzilla and Kong, like the cave painting of them fighting, and then have it like fade away with like some music or something. But nope, you did a Godzilla roar, and like I said, that my theater, there were some people that stood up, but most of the crowd just cheered, and it gets you ready for the next installment.
Yep, and look how far we've come.
Absolutely, we are 8 years down the road, and three films more, and another one coming on the way.
Indeed.
That is all I have for you on the fun of the facts. So I'll go ahead and I will ask you who your favorite character was in this film.
Maybe an unconventional pick, but I actually liked Marlowe, portrayed by John C. Riley. I think it was just a really, he's this unique kind of character in that he's not the protagonist in any real way, but in a lot of way, like his storyline is what kind of frames the whole movie. You know, it kind of starts with him as a young man landing on the island, and it sort of ends with him kind of returning to his family. So it's framed around him, and it's John C. Riley not in an overt comedy movie but still being comedic, but he's also like, wielding a samurai sword and speaking Japanese, and has these other like cool aspects to his character. So I actually like thought that Marlowe had kind of the most interesting and like engaging, storyline.
Yeah, I don't think you, or for at least myself, I don't think that someone talking about this could go wrong with a favorite character. Like you said, like Marlowe, I think he has a great story in this film. I think John Goodman's character, like how he's like, he works for Monarch, he's the monster hunter. Like, I enjoyed him in this film. Samuel L. Jackson, I didn't know what he was going to be, and he turned out to
Hmm.
be someone that we're rooting against. So he's like easy to hate in this film and like root for Kong against him. Brie Larson, I've liked her in the Marvel films or 21 Jump Street, so I was excited to see her in this film. It helps that she's very good looking, and I just like her as an actress in general. And even like the supporting characters, like the grunts that are under Sam Jackson's character, that there's a lot of them that you could tell like they most likely bonded on set, like they had a good time making this film and stuff like that. So I think all around it's a very good cast, but I ended up going with Captain Conrad. And I just he's he wasn't quite a hard ass, but I just like some of the things he said, or like he was always like on the lookout, like he was always on guard, like he was ready for anything. He tried to be like the voice of reason, and then he tried to like take and lead the pack. So like there was just so many different things in this film that he did or like tried to do. He tried to warn people. He tried to tell them do this, don't do that. So I just liked him for being like the voice of reason. But all around, this is one of my favorite casts of the MonsterVerse by far.
Yeah, I think in terms of the not that they're all necessarily these A-list superstars. Some, I mean, some are, but I mean, in terms of like the high profile nature of the cast, every member of the cast is like, oh, they're from that big movie or that big show or this or that. And I like that. It felt like Conrad was a very much like what they were trying to do with Ford in 2014, but then people kind of ended up saying that Ford didn't really have charisma or a good on-screen presence. It's like they kind of nailed that here, doing like the stoic soldier who's kind of heroic, but like is also a compelling lead character. They kind of pulled that off. And I felt like what they did with John Goodman was like a better executed idea of how they kind of handled Cranston in 2014, where everyone was kind of like, oh, you got this big name guy and everyone loves him, but then he's kind of killed off way too early. Like John Goodman gets to be around for a much longer stretch of this movie. And I like that. Like they're learning from some of the criticisms they received in previous films. You can argue that the ensemble cast is a little too big, that there's a few too many of the soldier guys that make it to the end and you're like, wait, what's his name? But generally speaking, maybe you could have combined a couple of characters here and there to make it more efficient. But generally speaking, it's a really good ensemble cast.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's they've clearly they're going out on another mission. They're saying this is a survey job, so it's kind of they're kind of like babysitting. So I like all the quippiness they get and what like that with each other. Like one of them asked Cole where he's like, I miss my bed. Don't you miss your bed and stuff like that? He's like, you had a bed, right, Cole? Or he's like, how can you be in a time like this? It's
yeah.
just good little stuff like that where it seems like this group of characters they've gone on missions and whatnot before, and they're all ready to go home, and it's like, all right, well, let's do this one more time.
Exactly.
I'll give you my favorite score for the film, and it was the night shot where Sam Jackson's character Colonel Packard, he's getting ready to go against Kong. He's setting up the napalm, and the score is called Man vs. Beast, and it's set up with a bunch of drums in the beginning. It's like doom 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 doom, and it just seems like kind of again like tribal drums, and then it has like there's more instrumentation in the background, and it just sets the scene so well because there's like fire in the background, and it lights up like the illuminescence of Kong, like the shadow of him. And I just think that's a phenomenal scene. And with the soundtrack that goes around it, it kind of gives you a little chill, like it's setting up for this big like boss showdown between Packard and Kong. And I really like that.
Yeah, the track that I actually ended up going with was the main title, aka Project Monarch. It's paired with this great opening credits montage of history and intrigue of discovering monsters and putting satellites into space and kind of seeing the world from the sky's eye and what will that reveal and sort of feeding into the discovery of Skull Island and setting the plot up. But it's got this great. It reminds me a little bit musically of the sort of opening credits of the 2003 Hulk movie, a little bit where the instrumentation just has this kind of alluring mystery to it, and the promise of revealing something big and wild that's going to change the world. And it's just that great kind of the vibes you get, like the X-Files vibes you get, the mysteries we haven't discovered yet, and it just invites you into the movie in a really, really cool way. So I like that track the best.
Yeah, I think this film did well with the music for the scenes it was encompassing and stuff like that. I liked a lot of the music in this film. What was your favorite quote or most memorable line from the film, or your 1A and 1B?
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. That's got some that's got a few candidates, but I mean, I'll give my 1A and 1B then, I suppose. So after Kong takes out the choppers, which I love the fact that Kong was killed with choppers in the 70s and then he totally demolishes choppers in this movie. I like that a lot. Anyways, I like that it's an exchange where Mills says, "We just got taken down by a monkey the size of a building." And then Cole just very nonchalantly goes, "Yeah, that was an unconventional encounter." And then but the one that takes the cake for me is after continuing that sequence of the fallout. Rand is sitting there and Packard rolls up to him and pulls a gun on him, and then Randa has this line where he says monsters exist, and Packard says no shit. It's like it's so on the nose and on the dot, but it's kind of exactly what you want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, there's some good ones in this film, like where there were introduced, like the crew is introduced to Mason Weaver as a photographer, and he's like, Mason Weaver is a woman, and she's like, last time I checked.
Yeah. And I mean, and I've got to shout out Sam Jackson, when later on when Mason Weaver is when she's talking to him and she says the world is bigger than this,
Oh.
and he just goes, "Bitch, please." Like, it's just a classic Sam Jackson line, I'm shocked that they did that, they drop an F-bomb in this movie, as you can get one F-bomb in a PG-13 movie, and it goes to John C. Reilly as Marlowe. I'm shocked that Sam Jackson, of all people, didn't claim the one F-bomb in this movie. He tries one and he gets cut off, but I'm shocked that they didn't let him get the actual F-bomb of the movie.
Yeah, I almost went with that whole spiel from Randa, where he starts talking about the USS Lawton and how he was the only remaining survivor, but
Yeah, because people don't realize that that's a story that he's telling where his ship was attacked by Godzilla. That's what the implication is, at least.
I loved that because I knew that was the implication. So if you didn't know, I mean that kind of that story just might go right past you, like, oh, he's telling another story about how he got here today, blah blah blah. But if you know, as soon as you hear that, he's saying it didn't have a conscience and blah blah blah.
Hmm. Yeah, I would have. They have the shot in the movie of the Lawton destroyed with the big claw marks down it, and apparently at one point in the movie that was going to be a shot of the shot of from the opening of the 2014 Godzilla movie, of Godzilla just breaking up out of the water, the fins right before he gets nuked. It was going to be that image, like that, a black and white grainy version of that image, but they thought that outright showing like Godzilla's fins or part of Godzilla that early in the movie was gonna was playing the hand too much, and making and sending the audience down a different kind of path than the movie is too early in the movie. So they made it something more subtle, and so it's the Lawton that's been attacked, and just the heavy implication being that it was Godzilla.
Yeah. Again, I love that they gave that nod to fans. Like, we knew what they were doing.
Yeah, it's pretty organic, but I enjoy it a lot.
Another one I liked from Randa's character was they pull up and he goes, "There'll never be a more messed up time in Washington," and it's like, oh, bud, you don't know what the future holds.
Yeah. Well, and they were, and the director even said, like, it was very deliberate. He's like, it wasn't meant to be like a momentary reference to anything present at the time. He's like, it was just meant to be a joke of, like, lots of wild stuff has happened in Washington since the chronological utterance of that line.
Yeah. None of those are what I chose. I'll get you to what I ended up choosing for this film, and it was one from Conrad where they're offering him the money to come to the island with him, and I just chose this one because it gives me a laugh every now and again because he plays it so seriously and so well. He goes, "An uncharted island. Let me list all the ways you're gonna die: rain, heat, mud, disease-carrying flies and mosquitoes. Sure, you could load up on the atabrine for the malaria, but what about the other bacteria? And we haven't even started on the things that want to eat you alive. And Randa's like, we'll double that. And he comes back with, I want 5 times that. And that just
Yeah.
gives me a good laugh.
Yeah, and I love the way, of course, that Tom Hiddleston, being a Brit, pronounces mosquitoes.
Yeah. It is all good fun. Like we said, there's plenty of lines in this film, and I went with one that gave me a chuckle. There's 5 or 6 other ones that would give me a good laugh, but that's the one I ended up choosing. What? I'm sure we have a 1A, 1B, 1C for this one, if not 1D. So what would I'll ask you what your favorite scene or a couple scenes were from this film.
For me, I think I think the highlight would probably be Kong versus the Choppers, just because it's such it's so stylish, and it's such a sort of triumphant, glorious reveal of Kong as a creature in this movie. Silhouette against the sun, the camera doing that 360 move around, going through the choppers, switching into slow motion back to regular motion. Kong throwing the trees and jumping and smashing the choppers, and just all the kinetic energy of it. It's just such a great kind of, like, if you're not locked into the movie by that sequence locks you into the movie, and I love it.
100%. I had that one in here as kind of like I called it like the Kong entrance. I know we've seen him a little earlier in the film, a little teaser of him. But that was one of my favorites, and I had 2 other ones. I'll mention one and then I'll come back to you so I don't overlap you. But I chose the Kong and Skullcrawler fight towards the end because he dives off that, like, I guess you could call it like a mountain, because it's compared to Kong, it's not a mountain, but to us humans it is. And he smashes the rock against the Skullcrawler's head or bashes it with the tree, and then towards the end he gets the chain with the propeller on it, and I just thought that was phenomenally, like, a very clever way to give Kong a prop or a weapon at towards the end. So he's flinging that around at the Skullcrawler and chokes him with it, and there's just so much going on in that scene, that the battle with the big one, as Marlowe says, and I thought that was phenomenally done, again, in broad daylight.
Yeah, Kong using a ship's turbine propeller as basically a throwing star is definitely inventive filmmaking for sure. You can't beat that. For non-Kong sequences, I definitely loved the sequence in the boneyard with the where they drop the gas and the skull crawlers are attacking them there, and Conrad has that great moment where he puts on the gas mask, and he's got the samurai sword, and he's slicing through the horde of the flying creatures as he's going to rescue one of the soldiers. Like that's a great visual moment.
Absolutely. That was one I was going to mention if you didn't. And again, the only other one I wanted to mention was the post-credits scene. And I've said all I could say about that, but
Oh yeah. The post-credit scene alone has candidates like the track that goes along with it is Monster Mash, the line Kong is not the only king. Like, the post-credit scene alone could be a favorite scene, a favorite score, a favorite line. Like, it's a shame. It's weird to say that the post-credit scene is one of the best things about the movie, but it actually is.
Yeah, that was one of the quotes that I didn't mention, but that was definitely on my list, with just Kong is not the only king. And then we get into the montage of the cave paintings, and that'll send, as a lifelong Godzilla and Kong fan, that'll send a chill down your spine.
Yeah, and I mean, the movie might be an 8 out of 10, but that ending is a 10 out of 10.
If not a 12.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, about something like that.
Well, what did you think of the Kong design in this one? The redesigned CG. 12 years after the 2005 film.
Yeah, we touched on that a little bit, and I think it's really good. Again, we talked a bit more how it embraces being more of a monster and less of a pure ape, and more of an ape like monster. Just how all of the creatures in here are sort of like There's a buffalo-like monster, a spider-like monster, a stick bug-like creature. They're all these sort of offshoot, you know, sideways evolutions or further evolutions of familiar creatures from our world. I kind of like that. And and in this movie they go away from it a little bit, in theory, as Kong matures and kind of his layout changes a little bit. But in this movie, the fur was treated almost like moss. Like his fur in some shots and scenes like almost looks like it's like moss growing on him, and that's sort of the way that the palette is. And I kind of liked that visual aesthetic. And so, and Kong's definitely doing more standing upright in this movie than he does in the two Godzilla Kong crossover movies, where he's got a bit more of the typical uh hunched over gorilla posture, but still has those stand up moments. Like here, it kind of shows that like he's a creature that maybe in their adolescence they start more upright with a different kind of posture, and as they grow, they become a bit more traditionally gorilla esque. And I kind of like that.
I don't know if this will be a hot take or if you what you'll think of this, but out of the first three films before we get to Godzilla versus Kong, I think this is the best CG out of those three: the Godzilla, Kong Skull Island, and
Uh,
Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Yeah, I mean, that's not I don't think it's that hot of a take. I think you could make debates about it, but I mean, you might like you can make that's a strong case to make. I don't think that's a hot take. I think that's a reasonable take. I don't know if I like wholeheartedly would be like, "Oh my gosh, the CGI in this is just like heads and shoulders above the other Godzilla movies," but I think this one definitely doesn't have the worst, I think. That's for sure. It's definitely a great looking movie.
I think what does it for me, like I said, is that Godzilla 2014 was so dark, and then
Mhm.
King of the Monsters, a lot of the battles were in like the rain or like the rain at night, especially in the ending fight scene, and then in Antarctica, it's nighttime and it's kind of snowing, blizzarding, and then even in the water, it's still it's darker in the water. But then you'd come to this film, and almost the whole time we're on Skull Island, it's broad daylight, and especially like where the choppers are flying through the storm and they first get into Skull Island, kind of like the entrance of it, and you see how like gorgeous the actual island looks itself. Like I think those are just like phenomenal like scenes and whatnot. And I just like that this is done in broad daylight. A lot of it.
I definitely co-sign more broad daylight monster scenes. Shin Godzilla and Godzilla minus one do a lot of great daylight monster sequences. So hopefully, maybe as the MonsterVerse continues, we can get a little bit more of that going on here.
Yeah, because they did more of it in the Godzilla versus Kong and then Godzilla
Hmm.
Kong: The New Empire. So
Yeah,
take a note from this film and do a little more in the broad daylight.
yeah. I'm all for that. Yes.
So, being this is our last MonsterVerse film. We have never done a MonsterVerse ranking, so let me put you on the spot and ask you how you rank these five MonsterVerse films that we have.
Ooh, geesh, on the spot like that. So, I would definitely say that Godzilla versus Kong 2021, I think that's my favorite. And then I'll cheat and I'll say a tie between King of the Monsters and the New Empire. And then I might this is tough, but I think I might have this one. Oh man, I feel bad for saying it. I might. It varies, but at worst, it's a tie between this and G14. But this one might have the edge. It's tough. This is the more entertaining movie. G14 is, I think, the stronger, more atmospheric, suspenseful film. But this is more of a good time of a movie. So maybe I'll cheat and say that they're a tie as well. I don't know.
I'll let you cheat, and I'll go from the bottom up. For me, it is Godzilla 2014, and then I have a hard time because Godzilla Kong: The New Empire it's such a fun and like cheesy like back to the Showa era type roots. So like
Uh-huh.
I think Kong Skull Island has to default to the four spot, and then the New Empire in the 3 spot, Godzilla vs Kong in the 2
Okay.
spot, and then King of the
Yeah.
Monsters still at the top.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, the King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong, I can see those are the ones where it's like it's tough for me to pick a favorite. Like I think I like King of the Monsters is more like it kind of has more little many little things that I'm like, ooh, I love that, ooh, I love that, ooh, I love that, ooh, I love that. But Godzilla versus Kong, I think overall is like the better experience, the better movie. But there's a lot more little things that I just really love about King of the Monsters. And then GXK and is I think a good third spot. And then it's kind of switches any given Sunday as far as Skull Island and G14. I hate to do it because G14 I still like a lot, but like I think a lot of these other movies just do a lot, give me a lot more for my like monster movie experience than that one.
G14 is just that slow burn introductory film, so by being that film, it gets defaulted to the bottom with the other
Yeah.
films having so much more going on.
Yeah, and I mean, look, if G14 had the classic Akira Ifukube music, if G14 had you know, made Bryan Cranston the main character or had him make it further through the movie, excuse me. Uh, there's things that G14 could have been done. If it's 10 minutes shorter and 5 more minutes of Godzilla, that changes things a lot. So I mean, G14 is like this near masterpiece for me that just kind of is just a few degrees off in so many categories.
Yeah, like if you like you said, if we get the classic themes and Bryan Cranston through the whole movie, that might be like my number 2.
Yeah, and for the love of the Lord, give us Akira Takarada's cameo back in the movie, please. It's like 20 seconds. Like, just
That
put it in there.
little quick cameo at the airport, I believe it is.
Yeah, yeah. My goodness, like the pacing of the movie's already pretty darn slow. You can trim a couple of those other slow pans and close ups and get us that 20 seconds of Akira Takarada.
That's one of those scenes at G Fest that the crowd would just light up.
Yeah, I mean, it's shameful that doesn't make it into the movie, but so many other elements of that movie that are very slow make it into the movie.
I 100% agree with you. I just had to pick your brain a little bit since this is our last MonsterVerse film for roughly, I mean, about two years or so now. I believe it's 2027 we get our next one.
Yeah, I think it's March 2027, so a little over 2 years. It's going to be a long wait, but hopefully we'll get some decent stuff between now and then.
Some another Godzilla minus one, a sequel.
I hope that one comes before the next MonsterVerse movie. That would be nice if we got that in 2026. That would be really, really cool. I know they'll do another season of Monarch Legacy of Monsters. I think there's a lot of room for improvement over the first season, but hopefully that can give us a fix of at least a little bit of Godzilla and Kong action before, they return to the big screen.
Yeah, I don't want to wait another 700 days, but I guess I'm stuck waiting.
Yeah. Yep.
That's all right. I just had to pick your brain for that one, but that is all I have for Kong Skull Island, and that is the conclusion of doing our King Kong movies until we get to
Not
our
the Yeah,
ranking.
not the true conclusion. We've got a ranking video to serve as the real conclusion because then we get to talk about the movies that we've already talked about before. So that'll be great.
Absolutely. I got to make everything hard on Chris. I can't let him go without a ranking video.
Well, if I can rank 40 Godzilla movies, then I can rank 10 King Kong movies.
Absolutely. This film did have a direct sequel. The film that was directly after it was Godzilla King of the Monsters, but the direct sequel was Godzilla versus Kong. But we are all done with them. We have done all the MonsterVerse, all the Godzillas. So the next video, Jesus Christ, the next episode we will be doing. I keep saying video. I don't know why.
Well, they are videos on YouTube just because they don't have footage. They are videos.
I just bought a new 4K camera. Damn it!
Yeah.
I'm gonna record a video here.
Legally, just do a slideshow of MonsterVerse memes as the video component of these things, and that'd be good enough.
But in our next episode, we again, like Chris said, we are doing our King Kong franchise ranking, where we are going to rank 10 live action King Kong films. So that should be a fun one, and it should be it shouldn't be as hard as like we said, the 38 Godzilla films that we did.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna make you rank all of the King Kong and Godzilla movies together, all 50 of them, and see how you like that.
I think I'm more up for that than you are.
Yeah, that's me digging my own grave there. I'll only make you do it.
We'll be waiting till next year for Chris to give us that list.
Oh, I can see it now. Invasion of Astro Monster #1. I can see it.
Everybody, that's thanks to me. I talked him into it.
Yeah.
All right, let me get you out of here, Chris. Thanks as always for joining me. I can't wait to rank the Kong films, because that should be a whole different conversation than the Godzilla and Friday the 13th films were.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one.
All right, so thank you. Thank anyone who's out there listening. We have our King Kong franchise ranking on our next episode, but until next time.
An uncharted island. Let me list all the ways you're gonna die. Rain, heat, mud, disease-carrying flies and mosquitoes. Sure, you could load up on the outerbrain for the malaria, but what about the other bacteria? And we haven't even started on the things that want to eat you alive.
We'll double that.
You have no idea how dangerous this is. I want 5 times that. Plus a bonus if we make it back.